The 90s mainstream rock consisted of Nirvana and Pearl Jam, all the way to bands like Korn and Deftones. When you have top dogs like that in the industry, you're gonna have bands that are left behind in terms of popularity. Today I'm gonna talk about some 90s bands you guys probably forgot about, or maybe you've already heard about these bands. My target audience that watches my YouTube videos will probably or most likely know all these bands that I'm going to mention, so I guess this video is directed towards people that only listen to mainstream 90s bands. And I'm in my weird positioning setup. I'm usually on my couch right there and it's a better angle, but I like this mic stand and I don't feel like moving my chair. Before I get into the video, like and subscribe. That would help me out a bunch, and hell yeah, let's go. Now, if you're wondering what music is even going to be mentioned in terms of genre, I guess it's just going to be aggressive stuff, some indie stuff, slowcore, maybe some shoegaze. So enjoy and don't ask too many questions. I'm going to start off this list with a UK metal band called Fudge Tunnel. And I first discovered this band when I was watching an alternative rock documentary that was released a couple years ago. And they had some interviews with some of the members in Fudge Tunnel, and they played some of their music in the background, and I was just like, Jesus. Fudge Tunnel was never really on my radar until I actually watched that documentary, and I'm glad I found their energy. If you listen to their 1993 Creep Diets album, you will not be disappointed in terms of just a fun, raw sounding band with huge riffs, huge vocals. The vocalist has a very great screaming voice and kind of underrated. The riffs sort of remind me of Helmet, so if you're into Helmet, then you're probably going to be into Fudge Tunnel. And technically speaking, Fudge Tunnel released an EP in 1989, so I guess an 80s band, but most of their material was released in the 90s, so a 90s band in my mind. They disbanded in 1995, which sucks, but they had like this compilation album that they released that same year, and they seemed pretty content with what they put together. Now moving on to a band I mentioned in a previous video but didn't give too much crazy detail, and this is the band Polvo. They formed in 1990, and in the previous, or a video I did with Alexa, I talked about how a lot of people compare their sound to Sonic Youth, which is kind of whack. Although Polvo has the same sort of guitar ruckus like Sonic Youth, it's kind of different in a way, the way I listen to it. They have a lot of interesting riffs whenever I listen to them, and some people classify them as math rock. I don't really know what I would classify it as, just indie rock basically, alternative rock. Their vocals are always so chill, so it's like whenever you listen to it, it's basically like that college slacker tone, and it's just one of my favorites to listen to. You can go through any of their albums and have a good time. It doesn't really feel boring or repetitive at any point. Sure, you might understand the recipe that Polvo has, but at that point, you're still having fun and still enjoying all the music. Not the heaviest stuff in the world, but there's still some cool moments. But, you know, indie rock can be aggressive, but you know what you're going to get, and they're not going to serve you some Metallica-like riffs. They did go on tour with a bunch of great indie alternative rock bands like Sonic Youth and Pavement, and I'm surprised they didn't get as much love and adoration in terms of not streaming, but listening and fans and, you know, stuff like those Pavements and the Sonic Youth. God, I don't know why I was saying streaming as if that was possible in the 90s. But yeah, dude, it just goes to show that there were so many bands in the 90s, the more I think about it, that there was just like so much you can keep up with. And it wasn't like nowadays where you can just stream and look up a band and listen to their music. You had to go get it physically, and that was just another part where it wouldn't help the band necessarily if nobody really knew you, couldn't really look it up, type it in the system. But after like 30 years, Polvo still has a strong fan base, which is very beautiful to see, man. It's all about the music. Time to talk about the band Helium. And Helium. What a freaking band. And I can't remember when I stumbled upon them. I think it was just going through Spotify and old 90s indie rock. If you are listening to this video, if you are watching me spit out these words, please listen to Helium. Their most popular album is their album The Dirt of Luck from 1995, and that is without a doubt their best album. And just because that's their best album doesn't mean everything else they have is terrible, because nope, everything they have is freaking sick, dude. The Dirt of Luck is literally one of the most colorful albums I've ever listened to in my life. And whenever I listen to it, I just think of a kid's hopes and dreams as a little youngin', and it's turned into a beautiful soundscape in this album. The band didn't exist for that long, but the stuff that they put out was crazy. And they have EPs, they have singles, they have albums out, and they have all you can eat or all you can not read, all you can listen to. Yeah, it's an all you can listen to buffet. That's enough about Helium though, because if you can believe it, I think I talked about Helium in one of my first YouTube videos with a terrible thumbnail. I'm still not good at thumbnails, but back then when I first started, god awful. Okay, let's move on to the band Jawbox. And from what I can read online, Jawbox actually did have a good amount of MTV airtime on, like 120 minutes, just MTV, and had their music videos playing. So you might remember them if you were there in the flesh, but if you're younger like me, obviously you kind of have to dig through the crates and find these bands. For some reason, they didn't get a huge fan base. I feel like they deserve it because all of their music sounds aggressive, but it feels and sounds dark too, with meaning and purpose, and just like this calculated attack on the wordplay, on the instrumentation. And you know what I'm trying to say. They were just very smart and very emotional, and that's what I like about them a lot. The energy is front and center. They have some confusion, they have some frustration, they just have all these emotions and throw it at you. And oh man, Jawbox, what a band. I believe I also found them on that alternative rock documentary, and I gotta find the name of that because it's driving me insane. Let me do that right now. Okay, it's called Underground Inc., The Fall and Rise of Alternative Rock. So shout out that documentary. Had a bunch of great bands in there. You had some Failure, you had some Jawbox, you had some Sunny Day Real Estate, you had all these bands. So I'm just like, man, Fudge Tunnel, God, what a documentary. That's probably my favorite documentary. Should I make a documentary video? Probably not. That will get no views, but it would be fun. You can go through any of their albums and just have a great swell time and find these tracks where it's like, oh my goodness, man, people should be listening to this stuff. People should be showing this band more respect. And just like all the rest of these bands, everybody has a nice fan base, a very good and dedicated fan base. Let's move on to the next band, and this band is Swirlies. And whenever I think about this band and listen to this band, I just think of how inspirational this band is towards all the bands coming up nowadays. And for some reason, I specifically think of the Philadelphia scene whenever it comes to Swirlies, and it's just this same sound where it's like a scrapbook or a coloring book where they just paint pictures for you very easily with every type of sound that the band throws at you. And that's just one of my favorite genres, I guess, Philadelphia or Swirlies inspired bands. There's a lot of stuff going on with this band, and I really like it because it's always directed in a peculiar way, but it always makes sense at the end of the day. And it's almost like they're drawing the whole time, and every time they're singing or making noise, it's a drawing. And that might not make sense, but I would go into their music with a very open mind. If you've never heard of Swirlies, I'm sure most of the people watching this have, and shout out Swirlies because they deserve a lot of love, and they still get love to this day, which is very, very good and nice. They don't have the biggest discography in the world, but that doesn't really matter, at least to me. And if it does matter to you, I understand if you get bored quick, but the stuff that they have is always fun to go back and listen to and just have on repeat. Shall we talk about the band Brainiac? Brainiac is insane and very inspirational to this day. I literally just said go into Swirlies with an open mind, but have so much going on. A lot of noise in general. This is probably not the band for you, but for the people who enjoy a lot of stuff that is going on, then this band is for you. And Brainiac is a lot of synthesizers, a lot of punk-y moments, and this is a weird, or not weird detail, but I guess it doesn't really matter because it's not music-based, but their albums are very 90's AF as Fudge. And it's so colorful and just exactly how they sound. It's just so much going on, weird stuff. This is a band where you go in, get out, and have a greater energy afterwards. Or you might be exhausted, but I get a little bit more energy after listening to them. They're probably a really great gym band. I don't go to the gym, but this might seem like a gym band the more I think about it. I'm glad I found them because they're very entertaining, and Brainiac very insane, but it's time to calm down and soothe down and just chill out and listen to some Mojave 3. Mojave 3 has a couple Slowdive members, and they bring that same beautiful energy from Slowdive to Mojave 3 and kill it. Slow paced lover music. I guess you don't really have to have a lover to listen to this music, but it just sounds like love to me. The music does get you in a very, not energetic mood, but it gets you in the right mindset. And even though the music is a little bit sad, I guess, or a little bit sorrow-esque, sorrow-like. And I read the band was formed after Slowdive was dropped from their label in 1995, I believe. Trust me, I don't know if that's right. I think it's 95, but yeah, trust me. And that sounds crazy. Why would you drop Slowdive? But you know, I guess sales weren't happening, or I don't really know. I have to look that up. But maybe I'm glad that Slowdive got dropped because they embarked on a beautiful journey with this side project, Mojave 3. Certainly some music you will not regret listening to. I'm gonna swerve into the next band and talk about Chavez. Reminds me a lot of Sebadoh, and a lot of similarities between the riffs and not the vocals, but just the overall indie rock vibe. So yeah, if you're into indie rock from the 90s or in general, I'm sure you've probably heard of Chavez. If you haven't, great band. Shout out the Yellow Button for putting me on. Now I'm going to move on to a very underrated band, Calm. A very, very short-lived band, and that's what you see with most of these bands. They're very short-lived, or I don't know, maybe they just didn't have the right amount of funds to make the right music that they wanted. I just spit everywhere. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of great visions within each of these bands, and it's so dumb. I wish a bunch of people just gave all these bands millions of dollars. From 1994 to 1996, San Jose, California. Pretty awesome, I might say so myself. I'm like 45 minutes away from San Jose. They do not have a lot of music, obviously, because man, they had like no time together, but they do have some EPs out and bangers across the board. The band did consist of a few members of the humongously popular known slowcore band Duster, and that's very cool to see because Calm is very opposite of Duster, not slowcore, very noisy, very emo, hardcore, post-hardcore. Like I said, the band doesn't have a lot of material, but the stuff that they have on Spotify is more than enough to inspire more generations and enough music to do all of your ventures that you set out to do. The last band on my list, I just talked about emo bands, and this is one of the OG emo bands, Lungfish. A lot of variety within their tunes, but they are regarded, or it's in their Spotify bio, one of the OG emo bands. But I don't know why nobody talks about Lungfish. I don't really know. Maybe I'm the only one that knows them? No, that's obviously not right. But shout out Lungfish, man. OGs in the game, legends. That pretty much wraps up my video. Kind of short, or I hope it's a good enough length for you guys. I hope I could help you guys remember some of these bands if you forgot about them. Most of you guys are probably not going to forget about these bands because they're kind of known in the underground of the 90s world, and I like to think that I talk about those bands a lot. And yeah, that's all I pretty much have to say, man. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. This was a very fun time. My next video, or one of my next videos, is going to be a controversial one. I guess not so controversial, but I'm going to talk about bands I fell out of love with. That's going to be very fun, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me, but it is what it is. I also want to do a hot take video again with Alexa and probably Hannah too. I can think of one hot take that Hannah has that would go crazy and a lot of people will disagree with, even I disagree with, but it should be fun. Looking forward to the videos I'm going to be pumping out. Yeah, man, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Keep the music alive. Don't let these 90s bands die.